God wants us to receive her love.
Right? So God desires... But you've said it from your perspective. I'm asking you to think about what it would be like from God's perspective. So what does God want?
Yep. So God has a desire to give her love.
Correct.
Yep.
So God has the giving of love. So if I just draw that, this love belonging to God, I'll put it in black so that you get the thing. So God has that desire, yeah, and
then God has a desire to receive a person's love.
Yeah, let's personalise it. God has a desire to
so
receive...
So God has a desire to receive my love.
Correct. Yeah, the greatest being in the universe has a desire for you to love God, has a desire to receive your love. You know, God feels it every time he receives your love. God feels it.
At times I felt like I've been overwhelmed that I do love God. There's been times I do want to give.
Yeah, and every time that's happened, God's received it. Right? Isn't that amazing that your little puny soul can affect the greatest soul in the universe, right? That's a pretty amazing system, right? So, greatest soul in the universe is open to receiving your love. You know, he's not like the Queen, you know. He goes... or one of the presidents, or, you know, someone famous, you know. You go to a rock show and you go, I really want to have go up and see this guy. You know, he's not like that. God, the greatest being in the universe, wants a relationship with you. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? And God is already open to receiving your love. Already done. And God wants to give you God's love. It's already done. From God's perspective, the relationship with you is already done. So, if the relationship from God's perspective is already established, can you see what we're left with? Just the two things. Do we desire to love God, and do we desire to receive love from God? Just those two things. So this is what God wants. God wants to receive your love, and God wants to give you love.
I find it extraordinary that God can sense or know straight away the moment that we have that real sincere desire. Like for 7 billion people, or how many billion people.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It is amazing. Like, if you think about it, for the average person on earth, just receiving love from one person is like, you know. But God knows the exact feelings, emotions of every single soul that God's ever created. It's an immense being. And even though God is such an immense being, you feeling love for God, God feels. So God is so sensitive that in amongst all those billions of creations of God, God knows when Lani loves God. And God also knows when Lani wants to receive some love from God. That's how sensitive God is. Now, you put you in an audience where there's 100,000 people in front of you, imagine. Like, can you ever imagine yourself feeling the whole 100,000 people as individuals, knowing their name, colour of their hair, how many hairs they have on their head, how many hairs they have on their skin, what physical problems they have, what's going on in their life, everything else. And on top of that, knowing whether they have a feeling for you or not a feeling for you. Every single person. Now, the more you become like God, the more that will happen. The more sensitive you'll become to every single person around you. But God is this immensely, infinitely sensitive being who's completely connected to you, completely connected to every single thing you feel. And when you feel something for God specifically, God instantly feels it. And even though God exists outside of this universe, instantly responds. And emotion, actually, is the transmission medium. It's an instant transmission medium that is faster than light. So from a scientific perspective, every feeling that you have directed at God, God instantly feels, even though God exists outside of this universe. So that means the universe is immensely large, right? And the universe is millions and millions and millions and millions of light years across, right? In terms of what we've discovered. And the instant you have an emotion for God, God feels that, even though God is millions and millions and millions and millions of light years away. God designed the transmission of emotion to be your communication method with God. Can you see why it's so important to let yourself be overwhelmed by emotion? It's essential for you to let yourself be overwhelmed by emotion. Because without that willingness to be overwhelmed, you've lost the entire communication method between yourself and God. And you can use your intellect. You can scratch your head and go, okay, that's not happening, so I might as well talk to God, using my head. And while God is aware of every single thought you have, God can't feel that. Right? And those thoughts take time to be transmitted. And also, by the way, your thoughts do not exit the universe. Your thoughts cannot reach beyond the boundary of the physical and spiritual universes.
And we've been so taught to minimise emotion and shut it down.
Correct. And yet it's the only communication mechanism that we actually have with God.
So the world is totally in reverse.
Everything's totally in reverse, yeah. But this brings us to that question, well, what do you want? Do you want to have this emotional flow between yourself and God, or are you just trying to get something else with God? Can you see? Yeah.